transparency. I know, like I said, I won't edit anything, and I don't do a lot of like today I'm sitting with Ruby, So here we are, we're recording. This is Ruby. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Ruby and I are both SSP providers, and we both went through the RRP training and are participating in the trial with the Rest and Restore protocol, which is the new thing that Unite has put out. And we've been sharing our how we've responded to it, and we're just getting together and wanted to share it with y'all about how things have been going and what we've noticed and all that good stuff. So where do you want to start?
Well, so you were just noting that you have finished, and I'm about halfway through after going pretty hard and listening every few nights or every other night. I took a big break. I didn't really plan to take a big break, but my body must have wanted it because I just put it out of my mind as a possibility, and that feels like it was a good choice. But I would love to hear your reflection, having gone from the beginning to end, anything you'd like to share, starting with how you're feeling now or what moved for you.
Yeah, I think that point that you just made about how you were like really on it every other night, and then you had sort of this like environmentally induced pause. Um, I am very aware after my pause after finishing that like unsurprisingly I went through too quickly, right? Like this is the thing that you and I as SSP providers are constantly hounding our participants like, please don't push past your no.
Yep.
And yet here I am. I was like, okay, I've got the 1 month trial. I want to just pound it out. I'm going to do it at the highest speed possible. And I'm going to just be done with it so that I can offer it to people as quickly as possible. And that was really my motivation because I came into it thinking like, this RRP is designed to support people that have physical complaints. And if you asked me before I started, I would have been like, I have no physical complaints. Like, I'm super happy. I'm fine. I have no problems with sleep or digestion. Or, I mean, I'm aware that I do have like perimenopause hormone things that I don't like, but I wouldn't have described it even as a problem that could be supported by something. I would have just been like, oh, yeah, of course, I'm perimenopausal. What else do you think is going to happen during this time? So I was like, I'm just doing this because I have a personal ethical thing around like giving someone something. I want to do it first before I give it to them. So I was like, I'll just pound it out because I don't even need it. And then I can say I've done it. And then I'll share it with all these people who do need it.
Classic.
Uh,
Couldn't be
like,
me.
yeah. So turns out I do have a lot of stuff that could be affected by it, and it has affected me in all of those areas. And when I checked in with Unite after finishing, I was like, so I'm feeling all of these things and like described all of the things that were disrupted, my sleep, my digestion, my mood. Like they were like, yeah, you should probably take a week off. Because I was like, so can I just roll into repeating it and keep it going on repeat? And they were like, yeah, could, but you probably should take some time off. So that's my biggest, like, obvious that I would have told anybody else but didn't do myself is that even though you can listen to up to 30 minutes every other night, I highly suggest that people start out with a shorter amount and that they offer themselves more time in between and that they move through it with the idea of like, I'm moving through it gradually and without intensity so that I will get more benefit from it because it is not the thing that culture says harder is better, worse is better, like herxing is great. It's not that kind of movie. And yet, yeah. So it will freak you out if you go through it at max speed and your body doesn't like it, is my main takeaway.
Mhm.
Um, I also am sort of astonished at this. I don't know, did I tell you this new concept called Herring's Law of Cure?
So you just shot me a little note about it, but I would love to hear more. Yeah.
Oh my God. So I think I had been describing to you about how I've at the first 5 days, I had like the greatest hits of my like physical ailments like come up in reverse order,
Hmm.
which I was like, what is this nightmare? Like it really made me like, oh no, maybe this is a bad thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was describing it to someone who's a naturopath, and they were like, that's a thing. It's called Herring's Law of Cure. So what happens according to this naturopathic philosophy is that if you suppress a symptom, it'll just go away. If you cure something that needs curing, it'll come up. I don't want to get it wrong. It's like in reverse order, top to bottom, inside to outside, and there's three things: top to bottom, inside to outside, and maybe like most impactful to this naturopath and I are going to do a video on it. So
Mm-hmm. Oh, good.
figure
Okay.
it out. But the basic concept is like it's gonna bring the stuff back up that was like the earlier messages basically around this thing that needs help. So I have had, like, I used to have major migraines, then they resolved. Then I had this sternum thing that was like painfully tight, like it needed to be popped or something. It hurt every time I moved. That went away. Then I've had for the past, since I had COVID, this neck pain that just wouldn't go away. Like I've done every, acupuncture, craniosacral chiropractor. It just lives with me. So what happened was that flared up super the first couple of days. Then that kind of dissipated and the sternum thing started happening, which hasn't happened in like 10 years. And I was like, I'm
Wow.
sorry, what?
Whoa.
Yeah. And then that started clearing up. And then the migraine stuff started. I started having headachy. I didn't have a full migraine, but I used to get tinglies around my mouth and my nose and visual aura. And that started happening. And I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Because that was like
The time.
ruined my life, those migraines,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then that kind of went away. So I was like, what? So according to this Herring's Law of Cure, I needed to like backwards go through those in
Wow.
order to get to like whatever needed to be resolved in my physical body.
Hmm.
So that's been wild. And then the other thing is that I now, and this, I don't think I've necessarily told you this because this is like last 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. I think it's doing that, but with psychological stuff,
Whoa.
which the Unite has not talked about at all. But it makes sense because psychological is physiological.
There's no separation. It's all one thing.
Right. So like I was having, I think I told you like all this stuff has come up around the dog.
Hmm.
Like, oh my God, maybe I can't do this dog. Um, which sent me into like a severe like self-harm, suicidal ideation place, which I haven't been in 10 years.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like worse than I remember it 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And it was so intense, but it feels like it was like a going back to my like, okay, like if you're going to say no to something, you're going to disappoint somebody, like you have to be killed, which
Yep.
is several iterations in my life that has come up. It came up when
Yep.
I came out, it came up when I was dealing with the divorce. And now I'm like, disappointing my kid by saying I can't have this dog. And it was like another wave of it. So it was really interesting because I think that the clarity around saying no to the dog was also a part of the like RRP because I think and you've had some experiences of this too that I want you to share about. It's like a waking up to like, oh, I didn't even realize. Like, oh my gosh, I thought I already like healed this, but like here it is in some layer that I was like effectively in denial about. And then it was like a really clear, like, oh, I cannot. Like, oh my gosh.
Big no.
Oh, yeah, big no, which
There's the boundary.
I'm an emotional authority. So I don't have that very often,
Hmm.
right? Like I'm usually like swimming in the like I don't know anything, but it's all really hard, But it was like such a like nope. And then I had a therapy session about it like the day or two after I had that realization about the no. And she was like, we just want to make sure it's not like emotionally like driven, you want to make sure that your no is like really about what's really happening. And I was like, yeah, it's actually not emotionally driven. Like it feels so solidly like and it feels such a like no options kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, anyways, I would say I'm shocked at how much this has affected me for sure. The other like things, I also have had like a reverse order of my like eating stuff,
Mhm.
which I'm also just realizing. And it's like, what? Like I had a phase of, I don't know if I told you, but a phase of craving like a lot of vegetables and fruits, which
Mhm. Yeah,
I'm
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
not a big, like,
Is that
I'm
the
not a,
chips
yeah,
kind of snacky stuff? Yeah.
yeah, I'm not a like health foodie miser at all. I have a very complicated eating disorder history and I don't have any rules about food, but I certainly had a phase where I was eating like only fruits and vegetables and was really into that. So that came up huge. And
Wow.
then after that came up, I was really wanting like cake and coffee in the morning, which is not a current part of my life and hasn't been for a long time, but was before I was super eating disordered. Like I couldn't eat any breakfast except for like pie or cake
Hmm.
with coffee. And I made this big cake and had was eating cake in the morning with coffee. I also don't drink coffee anymore, but it was like I
So
really
even just
needed
like
that.
cravings and tastes from previous phases are coming up. Huh.
So weird.
Definitely not a low impact experience.
No,
It's a time travel like
no.
everything else in this work. Yep.
Yes, yes, yes. It's
Yeah.
taken me back through all of it. It's really fascinating. And then sleep has been very disruptive, which I didn't expect because I'm a great sleeper usually, but I didn't used to be. So I didn't think of that until just now.
Mm.
But a lot of waking up, a lot of hard time falling asleep, staying up later, lots of dreams.
Mhm.
And uh night before last it was like symbols that were being drawn by aliens that like my ex was trying to get me to document them in one part and then my kid was trying to get me to document them in another part and like everyone wanted me to document these symbols and I was like trying to take pictures but the pictures wouldn't work and then I was like just trying to fall asleep, be asleep, trying to get not pay attention to the symbols. And it was like, get up and draw the symbols. And I finally like got up and drew the symbols. So that's
Wow.
not common. Yeah. So
Translating from the dream world to waking up and bringing that out of that realm in here.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't even know. It's been really wild, really unexpectedly wild, and far more psychological than I expected it to be. But it feels really like I won't be able to go back to not knowing these things in a way that feels like very important, probably most specifically around my codependency.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That is big. And
Yeah.
were you listening right before you fell asleep usually?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I didn't notice that I was falling asleep. You?
I would notice that I was awake the whole time and I was like, normally I would fall asleep, but I'm awake
Yeah.
this whole half an hour. And
Yeah.
usually I am going to sleep. I have terrible, terrible sleep hygiene. And
Mm-hmm.
I often stare at my phone until I'm falling asleep, which is the worst possible thing one could do. But here we are. I have twin babies, so I am revenge procrastinating and being like, I didn't look at a screen all day. I'm looking at a screen now.
Yeah. I
So
was kind of shocked to be honest at how little you sleep and at what hours you sleep. I was like, wow, how are
it's
you so nice?
well, I do if my children allow it, I do get an hour or two nap every day, which really helps. But I've always been a night owl, and my ideal sleep schedule would be like go to bed at 4 or 5 and sleep till 11. And luckily, my children do sleep until at least 9, so it's not that far off. But I have to wake up and give them a bottle in the morning. And so I think that was one of the biggest things I noticed is, and I know I've talked to you about this, but I would listen to it at night and then listen. I usually put on like a Ram Dass lecture or something or a Tara Brach lecture to fall asleep to. And even then, I was like, I'm awake for a very long time, actually registering what they're saying. Like, I was thinking I would just drift off, but I actually
Yeah.
became much more aware of my body when I was listening in
Hmm.
a way that wasn't disruptive, but it wasn't relaxing like I thought it would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's again, I mean, what we're asking our bodies to do is profound to say, can you release trauma responses physically? Just let them go. And it's like, no,
Ah.
no. So what I noticed is I think I was running on the beautiful natural gift of like mom adrenaline, and I have been peppy, but I have spikes of energy where I'm energetic when I need to be, and then I crash.
Hmm.
And then with the RRP, I think I was sleeping more deeply so that adrenaline or whatever was getting interrupted and not kicking in when I expected it to. But also I have a much more sustainable, well burning fuel of actual sleep, but I'm just not
Hmm.
getting enough sleep.
Yeah, like you didn't realize how fatigued you were and how you
Yeah.
actually need more sleep. You thought you were getting as much as you needed, and this sort
Yeah.
of woke you up to, oh, I
Yeah.
actually need more.
And I definitely know I need more. Like, I can tell if I went to bed at 5 in the morning and I'm up at 10 that that's not enough sleep. But I have my whole life been that kind of person where
Yeah,
whether or not I'm waking up at 11 a.m., I'm going to bed at 5. And when I had
yeah.
a 50-hour a week job, I was working until 3 in the morning, finishing up emails, and then up for a 9 a.m. meeting that I was running, not even just sitting in, but running. So I'm familiar with and trust my body to do the thing when it needs to do the thing. And so
Mm,
transitioning into motherhood, once we got through the newborn, like they're never sleeping. And now that they
mhm.
sleep through the night, I'm like, easy peasy. Like I don't have to run a meeting. I just have to be on toddler time. I can do that.
Yeah,
Fatigued. It doesn't matter. Um,
yeah.
but that's the difference is I think my body was like doing the thing and also I'm trying to recover from building two human bodies and I'm having the new experience of being responsible for two human lives
Yeah.
and that is different. It's not any more or less stressful than anything else, but it's a very different kind of embodied stress and a mammalian stress
Yeah,
than professional stress.
absolutely.
So I think that my body being like, oh yeah, we can just function on very little sleep, whatever, it's fine, is very adaptive to the circumstance I'm in. And also, when given the opportunity to turn that off and interrupt it, the body is like, oh, I would actually prefer to sleep more. Is that an option?
Mm,
And at the same time, my compulsive kind of screen addiction is just off the chain because I am also feeling all of these kind of what you were describing, like, oh, I can regain control. I can revert back to when I had no boundaries with myself. I can let all of these kind of indulgent
mm,
or compulsive habits kind of run their course.
mm,
Because my guard was down a little bit, I think. And so I've
mm.
taken Instagram off of my phone. I'm like taking TikTok off of my phone at night because I need to set a boundary with myself. And I mean, one night I was scrolling, I think, for like 6 hours. It was like, I should get up
Yeah.
and clean or I should go to sleep, but the dopamine is right here. Um, and I've
Oh,
had experiences like that with others doing SSP where they're like, whoa, my impulse control. And I'm like, yeah, because that part of you that was holding you tight is taking a break. but there's something right here that wants to capture your energy, like, so you gotta care for yourself. And it's okay
whoa.
allowing and to indulge a little bit, but if you're disappointed in yourself, if you're harming yourself, hurting your eyeballs, looking at a screen for 6 hours, think about that parenting that needs to come in and intervene a little bit. So yeah,
Wow, 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 wow. It's like the protector authoritarian versus the gentle parent.
exactly.
It's like when we start to let that protector authoritarian like take a break, the little child is like, oh, okay,
Candy and cookies.
yeah, and I'm tired and all those things. And then we could like reorient to the gentle parent.
Yeah, which is just like
Mm,
it's gonna put that toy away now, and you can have it again tomorrow when you have more control
mm,
over yourself.
mm. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know the screen time thing was happening for you.
Yeah, and it's consistent. Like I am always struggling with that, but again, I think those boundaries are just because there's a lot more clarity available.
That's it. It's
Yeah.
awaking to what's happening versus just when it's like when you tell the kid, like, nope, I'm taking your thing because you're mad. It's like you
They have no
can't.
idea why.
Yeah.
But they want it
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
And I'm getting to the
Oh,
point now where I'm like, I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want TikTok. It's not even feeling good. And I think before I was
oh,
dissociating into it more, and now I'm like, I'm
exactly.
aware that it feels like I'm eating cardboard. Like this is not
Yeah.
nurturing me. It's not, I'm past
Oh,
the point of wanting the stimulation. It's literally the casino technology that these companies use to keep you hooked, where I'm like,
but you
I
can
don't want to watch
feel
this
it
film, but
now.
I'm gonna do it. Yeah, and my guard
Yeah.
is down, and I'm laying in my bed, and I'm, you know what I mean. And so noticing, yeah, the gentle parenting, wanting to come in and take care of myself versus setting a boundary because I'm bad. Um,
Yeah. And to
and
be
all
like,
of this
tell me why.
exactly like what
Yeah.
else could you have that would be a little nicer? And I bought a book and I read some of it, and I have been like eating a
What?
snack instead of like scrolling and like
What?
yeah, so there's some of that kind of stuff.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm not like pushing myself all the way into some drastic change.
Yeah.
I'm just like setting out different options, you know? Yeah.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
so cool. It's so gentle.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think it is very interesting also to be doing this work while parenting two children who are differentiating and recognizing their autonomy and that they want choice. And, um, you know, I have a pretty easy time staying regulated with them. And also, I can feel their frustration when I don't give them the autonomy they're used to. And so,
Mm.
this is just a big old mirror for me to be like, what are the ways in which you could give yourself more autonomy so that you have the
Mm.
capacity for them to be autonomous? Because if you're in a hurry or you have no energy, you're not going to have time for them to choose three different outfits and walk down the steps for 20 minutes and sit on each step and tell you they're sitting on each step and then point out the shoes and point out the dust bunnies. And I want them to be able to do that. And we actually have time for them to do that.
Yeah.
But if I don't have the space and I
Yeah.
feel like I haven't had any choice in my life, then I'm not going to have space for them. So,
And if
uh,
you've burned all that capacity with them and then don't have the capacity to take really good care of yourself
yeah,
in the evenings, that's the other reverse of it. Like you want
right,
the capacity to take really good care of them, but if you use it all on them, then how do you take really good care of you?
right. And that's
Yeah.
when Meta sneaks in and is like, I will take care of you by capturing your consciousness for 7 hours.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
about that?
Which is makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh
So, yeah, that's all been very profound. Definitely the dreams were, especially at the beginning, really intense, very direct conversations about relational dynamics happening in real time in the dream. Revisiting complicated relationships from my past, kind of reworking or reimagining, like, what if that person and I got along? Or what if suddenly they expressed something that felt authentically like care instead of how we left things? Or my brain is like running through different
yeah.
scenarios and kind
Yeah.
of being like reworking some stuff.
Wow.
Also had a dream that I could see up into a UFO that was very like low hovering, and I was like, oh, that looks like my friend's living room. They're chill. This is fine. I'm gonna go inside for a while, but this is fine.
Well, we both had ET type things.
Yeah.
That's
It
interesting.
was. Yeah, and the person or the being in the ship tossed something down to the street, and I think it was just candy. And everybody was freaking out, and I picked it up and was like, I'm not going to eat this, but it seems fine. Like, it
Oh
was
my
just
God,
a
that's
very market, like,
amazing.
I think the people will be freaked out, but I don't think we're in trouble other than
Yeah.
humans freaking out. But I am going to
Um,
go inside and just let folks know what's going on. Very, like, responsive
yeah.
experience instead of reactive in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
dream.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Whoa.
was cool.
And I know you had an experience very early on with someone in your life. I don't want to say it unless you feel comfortable saying it. Do you feel comfortable talking about that? And no is a great
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, so I think with the SSP and now with the RRP, as a practitioner and as somebody who did the SSP in 2020 when I had a lot of space, but was also living at the site of the crime. You know, I had moved back in with my parents, so it was a great time to have all the space I needed to observe. And also, it was very heavy and disruptive. And thinking about how we titrate these experiences, um, you know, of course, like you know, we want to talk about the benefits, but the titration determines if those benefits bloom correctly or
Yeah.
not, right? And so giving yourself the space to recognize that in the example of the SSP, it's trying to find safety and connection and nurturing safety and connection with the outside world. Um, okay, so if the RRP is based on safety and connection, relaxation, regulation, homeostasis of the inner world, my issues with my mom have become front and center because we shared a body. My body was made in her body. So all of her embodied stress and all the epigenetics of our ancestors are coming through, which of course happens with any kind of nervous system work. It happens with reflection on the inner and the outer world. But when you're taking something and just putting it into the system, it's very hard to predict how that's going to show up and how intensely. And then what's working in tandem with the technology is your environment. So do you have a supportive relationship? Do you have a, like, I know people who do the SSP and they don't have somebody to talk to and they're like, I am starving for human connection. Would I suggest that somebody in isolation do the SSP and then there's nobody to connect to? And this is why we facilitate it, because there's got to be somebody to co-regulate with, and you have to see a face, you have to hear a voice. um, with the RRP, okay, we'll do it while you're going to sleep. Okay, and then so I'm going to sleep in a house where my children are, and like where I'm depending on my mom to help raise those children, and all of my itty bitty baby stuff all the way through now is showing up and wanting to reprogram into a more relaxed experience, while my mom and I are not doing a relaxed thing together, parenting, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm.
needing her to come in, and then her expecting our dynamic to be what it has been when I need something very different now. It was quite the experience. And we often butt heads so much that I was like, oh, this is nothing, whatever. But it was different. It was a different level of absolutely not, do not do that to me. I'm hanging up the phone. I'm leaving the room. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
it.
Your no was so much more of a no, similar
Yeah.
to mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had
And
no
she
idea
heard
that
it.
that would be a part of this.
Me neither. And I was like, oh, I'll just relax, whatever, it'll be fine. But it makes, now I'm thinking about it and I'm like, okay, like if it is about my body, then the extensions of my body, my children and my mother, are going to be a part of that. Um, and so yeah, basically just had some very big, hey, I can't actually hold that parentified expectation now. I don't want to hold it anymore at all, but I literally can't even hear you describe why you need it. I don't
Yeah.
have it. Don't tell
Yeah.
me why you want it, because I don't, I can't.
Wow.
And you know, we had one conversation where we were like, this is really painful for both of us to be in this much
Mm.
conflict, and it sucks. And also I was like, and I cannot go back to what you want me to go back to. The
Wow.
baseline needs to change. And I don't have the answer for you right now either. I'm just telling you it's different. And she heard me, and a few days later she was like, I heard the difference in your voice. I can hear that you feel trapped by this dynamic that we're in. And I think that, you know, there's all kinds of, again, like titration and holding and releasing and thawing that can happen and needs to happen. And it's a matter of how much our bodies will allow it. And because my mother has never been violent toward me or abandoned me, I think my body knows I'm allowed to do a lot. It's just a matter of what's the conversation going to be about it. But I
Yeah.
think all the stuff that might even be not from her is like, I'm going to thaw at her because
Yeah. Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
told me she's going to maybe be upset. We're going to have conflict. She's not going to harm me. She's not going to abandon me. She's not going to take it out on my children.
Yeah.
And so thinking about anybody who might do the RRP, thinking about like who might catch the brunt or the beautiful expression of what you have that has been held tight. Um, and if nobody's there to hold it, will it thaw? And
Yeah.
where's it going to go?
Yeah.
And I also noticed, you know, my partner is in grad school and he's been doing his master's thesis, round the clock, overnights, coming to bed at 6 in the morning. And we have our own rooms, but we often share a bed, when it's like time to go to sleep. And I noticed I was in the middle of listening. He got into bed and I became very like, oh, I don't want to bother you. I never do that. Usually it's like, oh, you're here. My body is safe with you. And it wasn't that I felt unsafe. It was that, oh, I'm relaxing and that might be too much for you. So I'm
Yeah.
going to scoot and hold my side rigidly and make sure
Yeah.
that I'm not rolling over onto you or whatever. And then the next morning, I had a really severe kind of neck spasm. And I was like, oh, yeah, because I went to bed like this. Like I went to bed holding myself. And what if he hadn't gotten into bed?
Yeah.
Did him just getting into bed, not because he's scary, but because
Yeah.
I'm afraid of myself,
Yeah.
thawing too much?
Yeah.
What if that disrupted what the music was trying to do, which is to fully relax my
Yeah.
muscles and skeleton? So, like, thinking about, do you want to think about doing this when you know you're going to be alone in bed, or starting with whoever's going to be with you in bed? And what happens if somebody gets in or out in the middle of it? All of
Mm-hmm,
this is
mm-hmm.
just like really thinking about, like, yeah, set it and forget it in one way, but also you're asking a lot of your body, and you really can't control how tightly you hold on. So
Yeah. Yeah.
considering, yeah,
Oh my gosh, amazing. The what I'm hearing like in all of these stories is more clarity,
yeah,
like more awareness. And that does happen with the SSP. And I often say to people, well, you're in more of the present moment, you're less in your defensive. So you're perceiving more. But it feels like this is at a really even different level because it's like I'm I'm going not just into ventral, I'm going into, and this was the other thing that I didn't realize I didn't understand, but that dorsal has safe dorsal and defense dorsal. And safe dorsal is the most vulnerable version of humanity.
safe
It's
enough to sleep. Yeah,
yeah, it's not even safe enough to sleep. It's safe enough to go into full repair mode
yeah,
where we are everything's devoted to looking at the body. So nothing is devoted to checking the environment.
mm-hmm.
I realized through this that I have probably never slept in a full safety dorsal.
Yeah,
I have been slightly checking.
yep,
So I've had slight fear based dorsal maybe my entire life.
mm-hmm.
And it makes perfect sense that it would bring up all these awarenesses of our relationships and of our no and of our what's happening with food, what's happening with screens, what's happening with pain, because it's like, oh my gosh, the status of the equipment is being perceived.
Yeah,
And when we're fully safe, we're like, yeah, I'm not thinking about you. I'm thinking about me.
mm-hmm.
Right. Which maybe I think for sure, I've never had that experience
Yeah,
of fully thinking about me. And that's where this dog thing is like, oh my Jesus, like that triggered the like, yeah, you're not allowed to think about you for sure because the fucking dog is there all of the time, So,
uh-huh,
and it's what your kids and your partner and your, it's like we get to see like, oh my gosh, yeah, I am never been, I've never allowed myself, or the threat level has never allowed me to fully pay attention to just me and to do
yeah.
interoception without any exteroception.
Yeah. And it just speaks such volumes. I mean, I always contextualize this work in the fact that, like, we are not living in a way that we evolved to live. Like,
Yeah.
if humans had sufficient community, then we wouldn't be codependently intertwined with our children the way that we are. And as children, we wouldn't
Oh my God, I felt that in
just
my body.
right. And as children, we learn that my attachment and therefore my food and safety depends on me reading the emotions of my parent. And whether I'm reading it and then being a good little kid or acting out, the input is we are extremely impoverished in interoception. It is all exteroception.
Ah,
What if we had a situation where like a parent would never think to look to their child for regulation because there's seven other adults right there, not even just for you but for your children.
yeah. Oh my
You know,
God.
like what if we didn't live in a world where we learned that food and safety and love and hugs come from ignoring what's going on in here and adapting completely to hypervigilance to everybody else?
Oh my gosh.
And I know there's like the Maslow's hierarchy that's been inverted. In indigenous cultures, the baseline is self-actualization. That comes first. That is what a child's job is.
Oh my God. My whole
Not to
body just
secure food through
full body
behavior.
chills.
Yeah. So if we think
Ugh.
about the capacity, again with the titration, you can only ask your body to do what there are resources to do. So if you want connection,
Wow.
you've got to then find the connection and think about what's getting in the way of connection. It's literally how our property framing, our nuclear families, private housing,
Whoa.
fear of our neighbors, and so we're inviting our bodies to relax into this natural state, but we don't, our enclosures are inappropriately set up
Oh my
to
God.
live into that. So
Oh
thinking
my
about
God.
titration in that way too. Yeah.
Well, and I want to have another conversation about that at some point because you have a very different environment than I do in that I'm alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even think about that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nobody. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I have friends, but they're not like in my house or in my day-to-day life, and I work from home and
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't have
even just
there's
like,
no one who checks on me
right.
or
Or
yeah.
someone to call if you even if you're like, oh, if I slip and fall, there's no like,
I
and you're
mean,
not
I definitely have those. I have lots of people that I would call if I slipped and fell,
yeah.
but I don't have someone getting into my bed.
Right. Right.
And I don't have someone who's going to be here in the morning when my kids wake up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have someone like that's another adult who's like also participating in the like safety of the environment or whatever. So it's interesting. I would
Yeah,
like
I've
to have
always
another
noticed a
conversation about
very
that.
different experience. Like if I'm home alone, like my partner goes out of town, there's a different level of relaxation I hit.
Yeah.
Before children, when I was like, oh, it's just me. And
Yeah.
I'm going to deep clean and relax in a
Yeah.
robe. And I miss that person, but I feel
Yeah.
a different level of, I'm not hyper vigilant to like, is my
Yeah.
music too loud?
Yeah.
They have a seafood allergy. If I fry some mussels, is it going to make
Yeah.
them cough? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's all these
Yeah.
calculations that I stopped doing. That is before I had two infants. And now
Yeah.
I'm like, there is no way I should ever be alone ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
would I
Yeah.
be alone? That's silly. And especially when they were tiny, the
Yeah.
minute I was just, even if it was just for an hour being alone with them, I was like, this is wrong. This is bad. Luckily, I had training in perinatal mental health. And I was like, this is a totally adaptive response.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But thinking about all people that don't have that framework and the
Yeah.
messages we get around what parenting is,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So there's just so much to consider. I mean, even just like, am I smelling another body? Am I
Yeah.
hearing footsteps? Like
Yeah.
all of the things we evolved to, that specifically humans and our frontal lobe and our capacity for social engagement evolved to perceive other bodies, and then we're
Yeah.
just not doing it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not better or worse, it is what it is, but
It's just worth noticing and
when we're
factoring
doing this
in.
kind of work and we're like restoring the body to where it should be, and it's like, okay, but is the environment there? Is it anywhere close to there? And what do we want to do about that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God, so fascinating. Okay, so let's have another conversation when you finish,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a week after. I feel
Yeah.
like things are like really coming, like the integration period is like, whoa. The
Yeah. So
integration
you
period
finished
for
a week
SSP
ago?
is great, but this one is like, oh my God. I feel like I'm having like real uh consciousness shifts. And I finished on the 30th of December.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's
So 10 days
been,
ago.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you. Yeah, this
beautiful.
is great
Okay,
to
I'm gonna stop
reflect.
recording. Hang for a second.